14, Part 2 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kevin Weir. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore. Book 14, Part 2. The full space of a year detained us there, and I, remaining that long stretch of time, saw many things, and heard as much besides. And this among the many other things was told me secretly by one of the 4 handmaidens of those rites. While Circe passed her time from all apart, except my chief, she brought me to a white marble shape, a youth who bore a woodpecker upon his head. It stood erected in a hallowed place, adorned with many wreaths. When I had asked the statue's name, and why he stood revered in that most sacred temple, and what caused that bird he carried on his head, she said, "Listen, Macarius, and learn from this tale too the power of Circe, and weigh the knowledge well. Picus, offspring of Saturn, was the king of the Ausonian land, one very fond of horses raised for war. The young man's form was just what you now see, and had you known him as he lived, you would not change a line. His nature was as noble as his shape. He could not yet have seen the steeds contend 4 times in races held with each 5th year at Grecian Elis. But his good looks had charmed the dryads born on Latin hills. Naiads would pine for him. Both goddesses of spring and goddesses of fountains pined for him. And nymphs that live in streaming Albula, Numisis, Anios course, brief flowing Almo, and rapid Nar, and Pharpharus, so cool in its delightful shades. All these, and those which haunt the forest lake of Scythian Diana, and the other nearby lakes. But, heedless of all these, he loved a nymph, whom on the hill called Palatine, 'tis said, Vanilia bore to Janus double-faced. When she had reached the age of marriage, she was given to Picus Laurentine, preferred by her above all others. Wonderful indeed her beauty, but more wonderful her skill in singing, from which art they called her Canaans. The fascination of her voice would move the woods and rocks, and tame wild beasts, and stay long rivers, and it even detained the wandering bird. Once, while she sang a lay with high, clear voice, Picus, on his keen horse, rode in Laurentian fields to hunt the boar, 2 spears in his left hand, his purple cloak fastened with gold. The daughter of the sun wandered in woods nearby to find new herbs growing on fertile hills, for she had left Circean fields called so from her own name. From a concealing thicket she observed the youth with wonder. All the gathered herbs dropped from her hands, forgotten, to the ground, and a hot fever flame seemed to pervade her marrow. When she could collect her thought, she wanted to confess her great desire, but the swift horse and his surrounding guards prevented her approach. "Still you shall not escape me," she declared, "although you may be borne on winds, if I but know myself, and if some potency in herbs remains, and if my art of charms does not deceive." Such were her thoughts, and then she formed an image of a bodiless wild swine, and let it cross the trail before the king, and rush into a woodland dense with trees, which fallen trunks made pathless for his horse. Picus at once, unconscious of all harm, followed the phantom prey, and, hastily quitting the reeking back of his good steed, he wandered in pursuit of a vain hope, on foot through that deep wood. She seized the chance, and by her incantation called strange gods with a strange charm, which had the power to hide the white moon's features, and draw thirsty clouds about her father's head. The changing sky then lowered more black at each repeated tone of incantation, and the ground exhaled its vapors, while his people wandered there along the darkened paths, until no guard was near to aid the imperiled king. Having now gained an opportunity and place, she said, "O youth most beautiful, by those fine eyes which captivated mine, and by that graceful person which brings me, even me, a goddess, suppliant to you, have pity on my passion. Let the sun, who looks on all things, be your father-in-law. But do not despise Circe the Titaness." But fiercely he repelled her and her prayer. "Whoever you may be, you are not mine," he said. "Another lady has my heart. I pray that for a lengthening space of time she may so hold me. I will not pollute conjugal ties with the unhallowed loves of any stranger, while the fates preserve to me the child of Janus, my dear Canaan's." Titan's daughter, when many pleas had failed, said angrily, "You shall not leave me with impunity, and you shall not return to Canaan's. And by your experience you shall now learn what can be done by her so slighted, what a woman deep in love can do, and Circe is that slighted love." Then twice she turned herself to face the west, and twice to face the east. And 3 times then she touched the young man with her wand, and sang 3 incantations. Picus fled, but, marvelling at his unaccustomed speed, he saw new wings that spread on either side and bore him onward. Angry at the thought of transformation, all so suddenly added a strange bird to the Lassian woods, he struck the wild oaks with his hard new beak, and in his rage inflicted many wounds on the long waving branches. His wings took the purple of his robe. The piece of gold which he had used so nicely in his robe was changed to golden feathers, and his neck was rich as yellow gold. Nothing remained of Picus as he was, except the name. While all this happened, his attendants called on Picus often, but in vain, throughout surrounding fields, and finding not a trace of their young king, at length by chance they met with Circe, who had cleared the darkened air, and let the clouds disperse before the wind and clear rays of the sun. Then with good cause they blamed her. They demanded the return of their lost king, and with their hunting spears they threatened her. She, sprinkling baleful drugs and poison juices over them, invoked the aid of night, and all the gods of night from Erebus and Chaos, and desired the aid of Hecate with long wailing cries. Most wonderful to tell, the forests leapt from fixed localities, and the torn soil uttered deep groans. The trees surrounding changed from life green to sick pallor, and the grass was moistened with besprinkling drops of blood. The stones sent forth harsh longings, unknown dogs barked loudly, and the ground became a mass of filthy snakes, and unsubstantial hosts of the departed flitted without sound. The men all quaked, appalled. With magic rod she touched their faces, pale and all amazed, and at her touch the youths took on strange forms of wild animals. None kept his proper shape. The setting sun is resting low upon the far Tartesian shores, and now in vain her husband's expected by the eyes of longing Canaans. Her slaves and people run about through all the forest, holding lights to meet him. Nor is it enough for that dear nymph to weep, and frenzied tear her hair and beat her breast. She did all that and more. Distracted, she rushed forth and wandered through the Latin fields. 6